All right, like Jared said, I'm going to start in Psalm 139, verse 1. You have searched me, Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, you, Lord, know it completely. You hem me in behind and before, and you lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me and the light become night around me, even the darkness will not be dark to you. The night will shine like day, for darkness is as light to you. For you created my innermost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. If I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made, your words are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. How precious to me are your thoughts, God. How vast is the sum of them. Where I count to them, they would outnumber the grains of sand. When I awake, I am still with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. As she's reading that, I can't help but not look at some of the little ones that are out here and imagine just that as this is being read. I don't know what goes through your mind when you read this passage of Scripture that if you've been in the church for a while, you've probably heard at some point read. This Psalm of David. And it's going to be the foundation for a few weeks, actually, starting today. But before we get into it, I'm going to go a little bit, I guess, youth pastory on you. And you were all given a sheet of paper when you came in, hopefully. Our giver-outer guy was doing a great job. I could hear him saying that if you don't take it, he's throwing it in the back of his pickup and driving down the highway really fast. So that's the best of him, and he scared everybody into taking a piece of paper, right? It should say on it, if I could be anyone, I would be, and why. Everybody have a sheet of that paper? Except for those of you that are still like you were in school that goes, I refuse to do it. We still have that going on, okay? If you have that, fill that out, would you? And listen, don't try and be all mature, churchy, Christian. I want to be Jesus, unless you really do. Like, if that's really the case, I want you to write down, just in your life as you've grown up, you've had movie heroes, you've had sports heroes, you've had musical heroes, you've had scientific heroes, you've had family heroes, you've had whatever. What would you write in there? Just write that down for a moment, would you? I want you to write that in there. If I could be, I think that's what it says. I guess I have one. If I could be anyone, I would be, and why? And if I would have been better, I would have been thinking ahead and had some little music, Jeopardy music going while you did this. So just do it in your own head. Pretend like you have inspirational music. Okay, that's close. Inspirational music going in the background as you're thinking this through. If I could be anyone, I would be, and why? And the youth that are in the room, don't look at your parents and tell them how this works, okay? I've already been through this once. Especially you, Isaac, don't tell them, okay? If I could be anyone, I would be, and why? Give it 30 more seconds. Okay, 30 seconds is up. Anybody willing to share who they would be and why? Not you, Isaac. Gosh dang it. I hate when we got a smart one in the room. Like, it ruins the whole thing. Okay, anybody feel less spiritual than her? Okay. Okay, the next message is on pride. Did anybody put somebody besides me? Well, never mind. You guys ruined the whole thing, all right? There's not even any going back on that anymore. And the reason I wanted to allow Isaac, why am I doing this? I want to allow Isaac to, yeah, I already heard it. So we did this with our youth a little while back, and we had some fun answers. We had some creepy answers, honestly. One of them said they wanted to be me so they could be married to Leanne. I'm like, who am I going to pop right now? So, and in fact, what's funny is when they handed me the piece of paper, she goes, "You're not about to read this out loud." I'm like, "Well, I was," and I didn't know. So, yeah, we'll just end it there. But anyway, we went through a whole list of this stuff, and the only person in our 23 or 24 high schoolers we had up there that night that said me was Isaac. And why? Do you remember why it was, Isaac, that you said it? Yeah, because everyone else is boring. All right? So pride and arrogance. We'll talk about both of those things in the future. But the neat thing is, and I couldn't have worked it out better. And again, there's nothing wrong with having the other. That wasn't the point, was to try and catch. But his was the last one we read. So you read all of these, if I could be me's, I would want to be, and then there was all these serious answers, goofy answers, things like that. And then finally got to the last one. The last one we read was me. And it was because everybody else is boring. But Brenda got us right off the bat. I was hoping to catch a few others on there. But I use this to lead into, so I mentioned last week that we would most likely be stepping away from the Did God Really Say series. Unless, like, it just felt like, no, we're going to stay in it for a little bit. And I looked at the list of topics that we had again. We've done 11 of those Did God Really Say. I had a conversation with somebody in the grocery store this week that says, didn't really realize how many of these did God really say things we could have, because there are so many things that we move forward in thinking God said that he didn't say. And it's just so, again, the whole purpose of that was to remind us that the way the enemy gets us off track of what he has for us and who he has for us to be is not by coming as some demonic-looking, evil, creepy, gross guy that just wants to ruin your life. It's by just dropping little hints of something that is just either a non-truth or a half-truth or whatever that we start to believe and we start to live in, and it just takes a little bit off course. And like from flying from one end of the country to the other, if you're just a degree or two off course, you're going to end up in a place you don't want to be. Definitely won't end up in the location that you're shooting for. And that's the way he works with us. So it's good to come back at times and go, am I believing something that God said that he didn't really say? Or the vice versa, which we did once or twice, was, am I not believing something or thinking something else that he did say? And so we may come back to that at some point. I mean, I was intrigued. I almost did move forward because there were still some good ones. Did God really say that what I believe about him is more important than how I treat people? That was one of them that was on that list. Did God really say that his grace means my continued sin is no big deal? We would never say that out loud, but we live in that a lot. Did God really say his main desire is for me to be happy and prosperous? Did God really say that what I have is mine, but it's a good idea to give some of it back to him? These are some on the list that I was tempted to go back in and be like, hey, I'm going to do this. I was really tempted to go with it when we had the one on there, did God really say happy wife, happy life? We were going to address that one. Or in the spirit of Mother's Day, happy mama, much less trauma. Like, did he ever say that? And I was going to go with it, but I decided, as I was thinking ahead to something else, in doing this time with our young people that we've just finished, I was about to go with that, but at the same time that I'm working on this, for those that don't know, and I'm excited about it, guys, at the end of this month, I'll have a 2-month break from teaching on Sunday mornings. I'm not taking the sabbatical. I will still be here unless for some reason I'm just not here, whether it's a family vacation or visiting a church or get to speak at a camp out in Oregon again, in the mountains of Oregon. Guys, I'm telling you, I've already started to get the list put together, who's going to share during those 2 months. I don't want to not be here. I'm excited to hear from those that are going to share during that time. You're going to have some summer voices that you're going to be so glad to hear beyond mine for a couple months in there, that are going to come in just that summer voice tour, whatever you want to call it on there. And I'm looking forward to that. But knowing that that's coming, that there's only 4 more weeks here before June hits, again, it's crazy to say, and then July comes, and then I'll be out in the mountains in Oregon again, same camp as last year, invited to speak out again. I've started thinking ahead in that direction as well, because I don't want to do it last minute, and I have to turn material into them early for the devotions we got to write with it. And their theme this year is on purpose. When they called and asked, and we were praying through it and talking through it, I said, what is your theme? What are the dates? The theme is on purpose. And I've started to reflect on that theme, and I've been honestly struck by the weight and the significance of the messages that I'm called to go and share there. The idea is for me to share with these young people that they were created on purpose and now exist in real time on purpose, for purpose, with a purpose. But what got me this week when I was debating on which way to go, as I was preparing for that upcoming series, I began to truly sense that God was going, I want you to share this now with this group as well. Not just wait for a group of young people in Oregon, but the people that you love here, the people that you're with all the time, because I was reminded of something very real. And that is that one of the most universal and deepest struggles we face as human beings, no matter our age, no matter our season of life, is the question as to whether or not our lives truly matter. Regardless of where we're at in our age and stage and phase of life, we often ask ourselves, do our lives have, or maybe still have, a purpose? It's all around us. And at the heart of this quiet, lifelong, persistent question, the deceiver continues to whisper in our minds, just like the did God really say, this question, were you really even made on purpose? Not for a purpose, but on purpose. And those of us that have had the pleasure to hear things like our kids have heard where we said, you weren't planned, can easily start getting into their idea that I was an accident. Or because of what life has thrown me, what I've experienced, there is no way that I was created on purpose and for a purpose. And that's the question that sits at the heart of this series that we're going to start at today, and that we're going to seek how God answers over the next 3 weeks as He shapes our purpose, how it's discovered, how it's lived, how it's tested, how it's shared. And maybe you're sitting there going, yeah, I hear you. I understand what you're saying, that, no matter what age you're at, because at the age I'm at, what I've experienced, maybe you're going, I hear you, you're right. I do struggle with that. That is something that is still a struggle. Or maybe you're thinking, I could see why a young person could be struggling with their purpose, especially the way that we all like to just complain about the world today. Then it's easy to be like, man, I could really see why a young person is struggling with their purpose. But if a person has lived a while, you might be thinking, I don't think they'd still be questioning or wondering or considering whether or not they still have purpose. And I would just want to share with you, I think that we do. I went back, and I find this pretty amazing here. Every generation gets labeled a name over a certain period of time. And I was kind of curious. It just kind of took me back to the many generations that just knowing our church family that we have sitting in this place today. And it's crazy. This is how many, That's last week's. Great. I had a really cool chart for you. How quickly can you put that up there, Karen? Hey, by the way, Jesus is who we've talked about all morning. So everybody stare at that word and not me for a moment to bring us back, okay? There's nothing that says on purpose in there. We've had this before. For some reason it sends the same thing. How quickly can you get it up there if I give it to you? Okay, turn to your neighbor and say, how you doing today, okay? For everybody that's wondering, Karen is correct. It had the right title and hadn't transferred over to the new slide. So it's everybody applaud Karen for being good and getting it up there for us, okay? By the way, I don't know why, but we found this Tabasco sitting on the piano this morning that says light things up. I don't know if that's an indication that something's going on here, but are we good? Okay. So this is how many generations we have sitting in these pews here today. That's crazy if you think about it. We have all the way back. Did you know that Faye, did you even know this? I know you can't hear me, but did you know that you are part of the greatest generation? I think according to Tom Brokaw is the one that said that. Did you know that? No? Do you feel like it? That's probably why you have no words, so you're smart enough to not get into any kind of trouble. But right here is the number of generations that we have. And we may say, and now you know when you were born, I asked one hard question this morning, I'm not going to ask the second, which is how old are you? Because I know how that would get you in trouble. But you know which one that you fit in there, right? I am part of Generation X. You think about which one that you're part of. We might say, now, I could see how a young person might be struggling with their purpose and understanding their purpose. But those that have lived before, no, I mean, I don't think so. But I would venture to guess, quite confidently, that if you were able to get together, if I said break out into groups right now, which is I'm actually kind of intrigued to do just to see the makeup of our group. But if you were to break out into groups right now, into your generation, whichever one that fits with you right there, and have a conversation with them, and then send you to have a meal with them, get in that conversation with them, start just talking about life as you're growing up, reminisce with them, complain about this generation with them, everything that you like to do, I would guess that you would find some common ground and some things that are in your thoughts and your feelings that are quite similar. And I would venture to guess that the same would be true if the topic of purpose came up, especially as it relates to your lives today. In the midst of thinking about that generation that you grew up in, those who might have been in the baby boomer generation. Does anybody know why they call it the baby boomer generation? Because you guys know how to make babies. I mean, it's really that simple. You're good at making babies after the war. So we can put two and two together. That's for next week's message again. Is Siri telling us about what's going on? I was wondering, it's like, man, I'm getting a whole history lesson on a generation here all of a sudden. If you were to sit in that generation right there and talk about what's going on today and talk about all the stuff that's happening, and the topic of purpose came up, I would bet, based on your shared experiences of growing up in that same period and all the changes that have come with it, you would find a common struggle as to where you fit in today's world, what your purpose might be in today's world. I mean, I especially look at those that might be part of the greatest generation. I mean, guys, that is crazy. 1927, which if my math is all correct, it would have been 1923 that you had been born, correct? Is that right? I finally got one right. I'm going to ask that one because that's amazing. 102 years ago. Yeah. There's no way, just in our human way of doing stuff, that we can look at this and realize all the changes that have gone on since we've been born and go, what's my purpose? I mean, I'm still breathing, I'm still sitting here, I'm still alive, but at some point we wrestle with this idea about purpose. In fact, I'd almost love to just do a group research study to be a part of these kind of conversations. Because with all the changes that are quickly and constantly happening in our world, it is so easy to feel like our world and our purpose and our time and our reason has passed or is quickly passing, or in some of them never existed in the first place. I haven't done a deep study, I'm not a professional at this, but I would go out on a limb pretty confidently and say that's why we have this thing called midlife what? What are we questioning in that time? But our purpose. Maybe we're at a place in our lives that because of the sinful, broken ways that we live and the decisions we've made over the course of our life through all these generations, we sit at a time today where we go, I've messed things up so much. What could be my purpose? Because it's a real thing. We just talked about it last week. Sometimes it's just simply the ebbs and the flows and the difficult experiences and the feelings that come with them that can lead us to a point in our life where we find ourselves going, what is my purpose? Just this Friday, actually, I was on a Zoom call for a couple hours. I haven't been this anxious about a call. Like I was telling my parents, I'm feeling something that I don't know what the deal was. I was just nervous. I was just not whatever. And my dad finally goes, anxious? Yep, that's it. Because I was on a call with someone who I didn't know. I'd been given a little bit of a heads up about who she is, but I did not know her personally. I've never met her personally. I'm not allowed to share who she is personally because she is a major donor to the Church of God and some of the different ministries that they have going. And she is especially interested and concerned and wondering about the one that we went through when we started the well called the C4 Institute, the Chapter 4 Institute, based on Luke chapter 4, that was being driven by our current general director, who is now going to be stepping out at the end of June and ushering in a new generation, a new time. And she's wondering what's going to happen with this idea of C4 because this woman believes strongly in this. And so we were one of 3, actually, across the country that were asked to share our story. And that's all we really knew. There could have been the opportunity for finances given. It could be just wanting to hear the story. We didn't know. And I was anxious, and I didn't know who this was. And I finally got to meet this woman on the Zoom call when we got on there. And both of us had problems getting on it. So it wasn't even a smooth entrance. It was like, bam, here we go. They're talking, and here we are. And this person I was kind of worried about is on the screen. Very sweet older woman. Former English teacher, done different things in her life. And she loves to tell stories. She loves to read stories. She read our story through the concept paper. And they wanted us to share it in a story because that's how she was. But because she loved to share stories, I found myself and then I ended up being the first one to present, which didn't help anything. In 15 minutes, what's happened in 2.5 years with the well. Went through mine, Finally calmed down after a couple questions. Went through the one from Michigan, went through the one from Maryland, and then finally she started talking. She says, I have some questions for you. And she would talk and tell stories to the point that you were actually she is very good at telling stories. She's just one of those you'd love to just sit down with and hear. And at some point in there, all of a sudden, something happened with one of their computers, and so they kind of had to take a break, and then she got up and she left, which my first thought was, what just happened? When they made a comment about her leaving and coming back, and she sat back down and she goes, I'm sorry. She goes, I wasn't trying to walk off. My phone was ringing. I didn't want it to be a distraction. I used that opportunity to go and get it. She goes, and I didn't want you to hear my deceased husband's voice, who died in 1917, which I was going, 1917? Pretty sure she meant 2017. And then that got her to stop. Like you could see it on her face. She just started thinking about him. And because she liked to tell stories, she went from that moment of saying that to a story. Using that opportunity to bring up her husband's name, to talk about how she went to the post office in the town where she is, which is, according to her, smaller than Waukene, actually, and was there, and a guy came in and said, hey, did you know that my wife passed away? And she was telling us that her struggle was in the fact that she didn't know who this guy even was. For some reason, she could not remember his name, and she was trying really hard, but he started sharing his struggle about his wife having recently passed away. And in the midst of that, she shared her story, and then she was sharing that story about sharing her story while sharing her story with our story. Like it was this whole long deal. But what got my attention was in the middle of it, she said, what I finally was able to share with him, I can relate, I can feel. It's not something you just get over and move on and all that kind of stuff. And she says, I struggled with it for years. I mean, my goodness, the voice is still on. Even if it's 2017, that's 8 years ago, the voice is still on there. And she says, I was waking up every day just going, what's the point of waking up today? And she said at one point, God woke up one morning, and it was like God hit me with something new that morning, where he hit me with this thing of, I get it, I know that you're struggling, I'm with you, I care about you, I love you, but you're still here. And she goes, like a light bulb went off. I'm still breathing. I still have a purpose. And so the reason she was sharing that was to say with what she does now, she was, God has taken me through different ebbs and flows in life, through different jobs, through different opportunities. Obviously financially blessed at the moment to be able to do things like make large donations to ministries that she cares about. But she didn't get to that point until God reminded her, you are still here. But what got me in all of it, obviously because I was working on this, was she was struggling with what? Her purpose. Because experiences like that, the sinful things that have broke us down, just the changes that leave us feeling like we're just left out in the cold, like the things we used to do we no longer do, leave us in a place where we start to go, what's my purpose? And we just go down that downward spiral to where we get to the point where we were thinking we're never created on purpose in the first place, but instead are just some weird sort of accident. And that spiral just goes and continues through thought in life. And eventually we get into a place where we fall into a trap unintentionally that's not good. And I think if you've been there or in it, you can understand what I'm saying. But we get in this trap that we don't want to be in, where we try to find acceptance and we try and find our purpose in all the wrong places and all the wrong jobs and adventures and people that we think are going to give us that purpose and that acceptance that we want. As one person said, we get trapped by acceptance and expectation of others, and we live to please everyone except God. And we get to a place where we try and prove ourselves to show our worth. And we start to think we just don't have a purpose. Not believing we're on purpose, we compare ourselves to others all the time and either end up putting ourselves down or trying to put ourselves ahead of them. We adopt another man's purpose or another man's vision as our personal standard for competition and for comparison. And we play the value game. determining both ours and those around us. And eventually what ends up happening, as we know, hurt people hurt people. Living in the hurt of not feeling like we have a purpose, we hurt others and try and take away theirs as well. And so not understanding this, not coming back and considering this, we find ourselves in a really difficult place. And ironically, the enemy uses all this to build on that original thought that started it in the first place. Which is why it's not just important to go to a youth camp in Oregon for a bunch of high schoolers and share that you have a purpose. It's important to do it for the people you're with every day that fill up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 generations right here. Because if we don't come back and take a look at that again and simply be reminded that we were created on purpose, miss out. And so this passage that Tina read this morning so well was written by a man who likely had to remind himself continually that he was made on purpose. David wrote this psalm. If you know the story of David, as it was so well said today, it didn't end with David defeated Goliath and all was good. He went through up, he went through down, he made bad decisions, he made good decisions. He had his own son trying to overtake him. I mean, if you really become a human, putting yourself in the shoes of a human named David, you would understand why it would be so easy for him at times to be like, what is the point? What really is my purpose? And to make it even worse for him, he was anointed physically, verbally, for his purpose. But so many things came to try and take that away. And that's why I think it's so powerful that he is the one that wrote this passage that was read this morning. Because I think he had to do what is good for all of us to do, but he's just able to do it so eloquently in this poetic, musical way. The truth that each of us was created by a divine creator with intentional design and deep, intimate care. That's what David is saying in here. And I believe he had to write this because he needed to be reminded of this. Before moving forward to try and figure out what is my purpose, how do I find my purpose, all this kind of stuff, he had to just be reminded he was created on purpose by a divine creator with an intentional design and with deep and intimate care. Look at his words again that he crafts. He shows us his understanding that he was created by a divine creator when he says, "For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I am fearfully and wonderfully made because your works are wonderful." Who is he talking about? His mama? She just carried him. He knew that someone created him who is amazing, whose works are wonderful, whose works are fearful. He's the one that did it. And it was with an intentional design. He says, "For your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be." God didn't at that time go, I think we just need another boy in this world. Maybe they'll name him David. Here, David, be born. Get in that womb. Now, he had a plan. He had a design. He had something in mind saying, okay, you're the one that I have in mind for this. I want you with intentional design for something. And he didn't just do it, I know, for good reason, because so many times God speaks, and it is. God speaks, and there it is. God speaks, and there it goes. But we know with biology, there is a little bit of, and I'm going to share some of this with you next week on Mother's Day, there is a little bit of almost like God speaks and there's light, because even at the thing that happens when eggs and that other stuff meet each other, there's light that comes. It's like God's again saying, let there be light as we begin the process of conception. All that kind of stuff through science and biology is pretty cool. And I know we have this idea in mind that that's how God works and that's how we were started. But David crafts it a little differently. He reminds us that he didn't just divinely create us with this design in mind, but he did it so intimately, so carefully. He says, you knit me together in my mother's womb. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. I don't know if you have been into the well lately, but we've hired a new young lady, and I'll probably get in trouble if it goes public. I don't know when it's crocheting or when it's knitting. It all looks the same to me. Sewing, pretty sure uses a machine. I'm sure that doesn't always. I don't want those from the greatest generation to give me that look. But knitting or crocheting, it's all kind of the same. But if you go in there, in between customers, the way that she keeps herself busy and not having to talk to all of you at times, she's knitting or crocheting or whatever. And I don't have, whatever, you guys are looking at each other like he doesn't know what he's talking about, and I don't, okay? Someone can tell me later the difference, all right? Someday I got to learn. I'm going to share this with the youth in Oregon again. And I'm not showing her picture to you because I don't have permission, but if you've seen her and you've seen it, you can kind of see she really gets into it, to the point that she can almost just, all of her focus is on that because she is being careful about what she's doing. What you don't know, sometimes she prints it out, but a lot of times it's on her phone. She's actually pre-looked up a design of what she's trying to make. And the reason she is so intensely looking at it and carefully looking at it is because she's trying to make it like the design that she has in mind. This is what David is saying God did with each and every one of us. This is what he's saying was done with him. And he's excited to do it. I was in another conversation this week with somebody. We were talking about the Pee Wee track meet, but we got a little confused on races because apparently, and again, forgive me for saying the wrong thing, but back in the day in grade school when we made the cars out of boxes, or those box car races, is that what they call them, that they do? Is that right, Sadie? Okay. Did you make one? Did you like doing it? Did you have something that you wanted to make in mind? Or did you just throw something together last minute, walking with a box over you? You made something? Was it fun to work on? Never mind then. Did you do it by yourself, or did your sisters or parents help you? Your mom? Was it fun to work with her? Next week's Mother's Day, so the answer is yes. Okay. I'm picturing these kids, and you see it on Facebook afterwards. Remember those days when you're making this, you have this design in mind, you're excited to do it, you're ecstatic, you're ready to go out, and you're ready to race your car that you built. That's kind of the joy and the excitement that a young kid has when they do that, and even to a small extent, the parent, till they get annoyed with something, is what I think God has when he's creating us. As the divine creator with an intentional design in mind and that intimate care that he has. I think that that's how he feels, that same joy, that same excitement that these young kids have when they're making their box car and looking forward to race it, is what he has when he's made each and every single one of us. And one of the reasons that I actually feel this way, and I know it's hard for us to believe because of the drama and the trauma that has unfolded in our lives. There's so many things that take it away, that just take away this idea, that battle against this idea that we actually were created by a divine creator on purpose with great care. There's so many things that come against it, and David experienced the same kind of things, probably even more than we did, but he also recognized something else that often gets lost in this beautiful description of his birth. And that's what still takes place today, or in his time, in that moment, in that day, that leads me to believe that God had excitement while he was doing this. Because after all the stuff that David had done, and trust me, David's got a lot of skeletons in his closet. All the mistakes he'd made, all the times that he had not lived out the purpose that God created, God still had this about him that he wrote. Nope, that's not the one. Guess I don't have it in there. He actually has in there, how precious are your thoughts about me, O God. They can't be numbered. In the midst of everything that took place, everything that happened, all this that he described, when it's all said and done, God had precious thoughts about the creation that he had created. That's why I love that passage. David understood. My question today as we start this is, do we still believe that we were created on purpose? When we read these words that we just read by David, and only you can answer that. When your head is on your pillow at night and there's nobody else to answer to, there's no right answers to give, there's nobody to put on a show for, there's nobody to impress, there's nobody to look valuable, but when it's just you and your own head and your own feelings, and you're in, like I said, going to bed and all those thoughts are going through your head, do you have the same thoughts about you that God does? Do you still recognize the same thing about you that David did about himself? Again, David went through all kinds of crud, and I believe that's why he had to. But do you still feel the same thing about you when you look at that mirror in the morning and get ready for work or school or whatever? Are those still the same thoughts? Is what goes through our head, I was created on purpose? It's important for us to ask that because, like David, we are on purpose. And anything else we're going to share, we were created on purpose. Anything else that's going to come up, and honestly, anything else we do in life, and how we do it and how we approach it comes as to whether or not we still or ever did believe that. And all throughout history, people have had to be reminded of this or remind themselves of this. Jeremiah, who was a depressing man, who many believe struggled with actual depression, he himself had to be reminded through the word of the Lord that came to him, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. Job had to remember this simple truth. We know the story of Job. You don't have to say much about that, but there's a moment in all his dialogue where he has to remember, your hands shaped me and made me. Will you now turn and destroy me? Remember that you molded me like clay. Will you now turn me to dust again? Did you not pour me out like milk and curdle me like cheese, clothe me with skin and flesh, and knit me together with bones and sinews? In the midst of all that, he had to be reminded, you gave me life and showed me kindness, and in your providence watched over my spirit. And then, of course, David, when he's saying, where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? He realizes it's nowhere. Why? For you created me. You created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. I am on purpose. David, Job, Jeremiah, so many others have remembered or been reminded of this. And my question today as we end this is, do you? Because again, this is not just for the alpha generation. Which again, can I clarify something? I know how many people feel about this generation. We won't get on that whole rant again. And so when they hear alpha generation, they go, that fits them well. They just think they're a bunch of alphas. Did you know that's not why it's called alpha? It's because they ran out of the alphabet after Gen X and Gen Z And so they're starting over. And you know what I think is awesome? So are we with this generation. I think it's perfectly fitting that these young people sitting among us are called the Alpha generation, and I cannot wait to go tell them that in Oregon when it's just them and focus on that. And I think we should encourage them, but we will best do that when we recognize that we are still on purpose, have a purpose, are still breathing, just like that woman. We are still here for a purpose. You were made. You were made with intention. You were made with divine design. You were made with intimate understanding. You were made on purpose, and you still have a purpose. You matter. In fact, you matter so much, and He cares so much about this that what we just remembered 2 weeks ago, He did. He cares so much about this that He sent His Son to unjustly and brutally die for us, to give us an opportunity to still actually live out our purpose. He sent His Son through a sacrificial death. The same hands that shaped you and I sent His Son so that His could be pierced for us. Because He wants us so badly to still remember we're on purpose. He wants us to live out that on purpose. He wants us to walk out these doors and walk into a new day on purpose. But the amazing thing is it didn't end there. He rose again so that we can be reminded daily that He cares and empowered by Him to actually see Him help us live out our purpose. We started with the question today, if I could be anyone, I would be. Hopefully we get to the point where the answer is always me. Because you are on purpose. Every single one of you. Fact is, before this started today, there's just been so many distractions, so many different things I was trying to hide, and so I won't tell you where I hid. Never mind. Because if I ever need to do it again. But I could hear people coming in here, and my prayer was, God, help me to see every person sitting in this room and be reminded that they were fearfully, wonderfully knit together, woven together in the womb of their mother on purpose. By the same divine Creator with an intentional design and deep, intimate care, and that same Creator can be said of them, how precious are His thoughts about them. More than the grains of sand on the seashore. And again, He proved that with what we remembered 2 weeks ago. But just as those generations pass quickly, so does life. And so do our days. And we forget. And so we're going to close our time today with an act that maybe will help us to remember. We call it communion, where we commune with each other as we commune with Him. And we remember that unjust, sacrificial death where the hands that formed us became the hands pierced to save us, so that we can be reminded and live out our on purpose. And as you come up today, what I want to encourage you to do, Maya's going to sing for us. You can sing along if you want to. You don't have to. Because what I want you to do more than anything is to go back to that original question and use this time to be honest with God and reflect with Him. Maybe, you know what you wrote on that paper if you wrote something on there. And if it's somebody else, it's not beat ourselves up time, but if we would have had a hard time writing that the answer is me, ask why. Talk to God about that, because He is alive and active to walk through that. But use it to be reminded that He did die for you. His intimate, cared for, designed creation. And let's just use this time. In fact, we're just going to do it completely different today. Not even going to close this time. We're going to let this be the closing. Because when we're talking about purpose, that's personal. And so I'm going to encourage you, however you want to come up when you want to, and you take those elements on your own. The bread that signifies the body that was broken for you, the blood that signifies being poured out for you, and you in your own time with him around this topic that's going to center around the next 3 weeks from here. You do what you need to do if you're struggling with still feeling like you're on purpose or have purpose, a reason to keep going. If we can relate it all to that woman on there. And you just have that moment and use those elements to remind you. And when you're ready to be done, we ask you to go fairly quietly till you get out here. In fact, I'm probably going to go ahead and shut the doors in case someone just wants to do business for a while. And just have a moment with God, and let's end our time with this. So I'll take these off. This is our prayer. This is our goodbye. This is our everything today. You do what you need to do to be reminded that you are on purpose today.